Alright, so for this video I'm covering the yellow phase of alchemy. I wanted to start off with the from Dennis William Huck's Sorcerer's Stone, A Beginner's Guide to Alchemy. I'm going to be reading the Emerald Tablet. In truth, without deceit, certain and most veritable, that which is below corresponds to that which is above, and that which is above corresponds to that which is below, to accomplish the miracles of the one thing. And just as all things that come from this one thing, through the meditation of one mind, so do all created things originate from the one thing, through transformation. Its father is the sun, its mother the moon. The wind carries it in its belly. Its nurse is the earth. It is the origin of all, the consecration of the universe. Its inherent strength is perfected, if it is turned into earth. Separate the earth from the fire, the subtle from the gross, gently and with great ingenuity. It rises from the earth to heaven and descends again to earth, thereby combining with itself the powers of both the above and the below. Thus will you obtain the glory of the whole universe. All obscurity will be clear to you. This is the greatest force of all powers, because it overcomes every subtle thing and penetrates every solid thing. In this way was the universe created. From this comes many wondrous applications, because this is the pattern. Therefore I am called thrice greatest Hermes, having all three parts of the wisdom of the whole universe. Herein I have completely explained the operation of the sun. So that's the Emerald Tablet, and that's the guiding principle in alchemy. Hello, Meg. Good to see you. I'm doing fantastic. I'm a lot better than I was. I have acute bronchitis, unfortunately. So then the last video when I was so sick, that's why I was so sick. And I figured out how to get the chat to work this time. Last time I was on here, the chat didn't work at all for some reason. So I wanted to start off with that because the Emerald Tablet is the guiding principle behind alchemy. And I wanted to go to the Azoth picture. Now this does look a lot like tarot cards. And we started off here with calcination. And now we have graduated to this point here, the fifth stage. And we have the two trees of spirit, or two birds of spirit, and the tree of life. And so this is the unconscious and the conscious self. Whenever we see two, that's usually where the two that is in there, and they're in the tree of life. And this stage is fermentation, which is symbolized this way by this in Dennis William Huck's book, and by the Sun card. In the Sun card, you can see the child of the philosophers, as it's called, which is the lesser stone. And we'll take a look further at the Sun card a little bit in a moment. But I wanted to go ahead and read from Dennis William Huck's book about fermentation. Chemical fermentation is a natural process consisting of two parts. First comes putrefaction, in which the matter is allowed to rot and decompose. The alchemists even added manure to help get the process going. The sign that putrefaction is nearing its end is a milky white fluid that accumulates on the blackened, rotting material. And that is usually referred to as the white eagle. The dead material seems to come to life again with an influx of digesting bacteria as fermentation begins. This new life force changes the fundamental nature of the material in what the alchemists saw as a process of spiritization. Out of the utter blackness of putrefaction comes the yellow ferment, which appears like a golden wax flowing out of the foul matter. Its arrival is announced by the formation of an iridescent oily film the alchemists named the peacock's tail. And that's why in alchemy pictures, I think that you'll, and especially the alchemical wedding, which is covered in the Rosicrucians book, you'll see a peacock in a vial. Let me see if Dennis William Huck included it in his book or not. But that's from the alchemical wedding. Okay, he didn't put it in here. I only have a digital copy and I can't show it to you. But usually it's going to be, the peacock is in a vial similar to this one. And so you'll always see peacocks associated with alchemy, because the peacock, the iridescent oil that comes out during fermentation, is a sign of this stage of alchemy, of fermentation. And again, this is the point where we have the lesser stone. And the yellow phase of alchemy is pretty interesting, because the yellow phase of alchemy was only done by alchemists in Alexandria and the East. And so I have Edgar Cayce and The Secret of the Golden Flower here. And this is the ancient Taoism Way to Your True Self. And it talks about the elixir of life, which is what happens in the yellow phase of alchemy. At this point we have the child of the philosophers. We have a philosopher's stone, but it's called the lesser stone, and it's known to be unstable. So it says here, the way to the elixir of life, known as supreme magic, is seed water, spirit fire, and thought earth, these three. What is seed water? It is the true one energy of former heaven. Spirit fire is the light. Thought earth is the heavenly heart of the middle dwelling. Spirit fire is used for affecting thought earth for substance, and seed water for the foundation. Ordinary people make their bodies through thoughts. The body is not only the 7-foot tall outer body, and the body is the lower nature. The lower nature adheres to consciousness in order to affect it. Consciousness depends, for its origin, on the lower nature. Lower nature is dim. It is the substance of consciousness. As long as this consciousness is not interrupted, it continues to get from generation to generation, and the changes of the form of the lower nature and the transformations of substance are unceasing. So that refers to reincarnation, when it says the transformation of substances is unceasing. And it basically is the basic consciousness. So that would be the analytical conscious self, which is depicted as one of the birds in the Azoth picture. So we have here in the picture with the two birds in the tree of life, we have the subconscious and the analytical consciousness. And so all of us focus on the analytical consciousness, and it's important that we integrate the subconscious in order to ascend to this level of knowledge, to this yellow phase, to fermentation, where we have this lesser stone. And it's really interesting because the relationship between the subconscious and conscious play out in the tarot. And I just covered the Lover's card. So one of the interesting things about the Lover's card is, you notice the man is looking at the woman and the woman is looking up at the angel. So the man is the analytical consciousness, the woman is the subconscious, and the subconscious is always connected to the divine. So the thing that the conscious self has to do is tune in with the subconscious in order to connect with spirit. And since fermentation is the spiritization, as D.W. Huck was saying, of the mind, of the body, this is the point where those two parts, the subconscious and the conscious self, are balanced together. They're united. They're working together. And of course, to get to that point, you have to do shadow work, which was pretty much what the white phase was all about, was bringing the subconscious into the conscious realm, becoming aware of our subconscious patterns. As The Secret of the Golden Flower said, at this point, it continues to beget from generation to generation. So the conscious self has habits that we inherit from our parents, from our culture, from where we come from. It's pretty much in our genes, according to doctors even. Science says that certain things, certain patterns are in our genes. Addictive behavior, for example. Everybody knows that's supposed to be in your genes. So this part of alchemy is where you transcend that. You transcend those habits and those patterns, and you reach a place where you can connect into unity consciousness. But again, it's not stable. This is a new state of mind, but you haven't really gotten to the point where you've connected completely with it. Now, the phrase from the Emerald Tablet for this one is separate the earth from the fire, this subtle from the gross. So we have earth and fire as the two elements in this phase of alchemy, whereas before it was only one element. This one we have two, earth and fire, and we're separating the two from each other. Now, earth would be the earthly body, the consciousness. The fire would be the spirit. And this has to do with the throat chakra. This is associated with the throat chakra. It's associated with Mercury, which makes sense because Mercury is usually associated with the intellect, with talking, conversation. Just think of Gemini, chatty, right? This has to do with Jubera and Chesed on the Kabbalah tree of life, so severity and mercy. And it is associated with Leo and Capricorn, which seems like opposites almost, but they're both the take charge signs of astrology. So, pardon me, that cough is just not going to go away anytime soon. All right. For Paul Foster Case, his fermentation, he talks about the stone. When he talks about the stone, he doesn't talk about the lesser stone at all. But he does talk about fermentation. Give me just one moment. Looks like I lost my bookmark in here. So Paul Foster Case approaches things from a different perspective. And his is based more on the 12 zodiac signs as opposed to the 7 chakras. But he does have all the different, most of the different ones that that D.W. Huck has. Just have to find fermentation. Give me one moment. How's everybody doing out there? How are you doing, Meg? It's been an interesting week for me. A lot of medical stuff. Seems to be like Chiron and the North Node conjunctions bringing up all kinds of medical issues in my life. Let's see. Paul Foster Case's book is not as intuitive as D.W. Huck's. Okay. Consequently, you find that fermentation is connected with the direction west below. This is on the, has to do with the space, the cube of space that he talks about. He talks about the sign of Capricorn. So it's associated with Capricorn even with Paul Foster Case. And fermentation means excitement, according to Paul Foster Case. To ferment is, in the older sense of the word, to leaven. We know now that fermentation is decomposition produced in an organic substance by living organisms. Whether this was equally well known to the ancients may be questioned, but it is certain that the secret schools have always understood the process of fermentation to be analogous to something higher. And that's because it created spirit, right? It created alcohol. Yeah, I know, Meg. It's so easy to stay busy working on this stuff. I know you put a lot of time into your blog. I'm glad that you've been good. I know you're working on your office, right? So fermentation, according to Paul Foster Case, has to do with excitement. It excites the senses. And then he explains that it's associated with the letter Ein, which is the eye as the organ of sight. So it's very interesting. I did do fermentation as an entire video in my 12 series, synchronizing the 12 things. the 12 steps of alchemy. So if you look, it is there. That's good that your office is almost done, Meg. I'm really glad. So let's go back to Edgar Cayce and the Secret of the Golden Flower, because there is more here to look at concerning the elixir of life, which is the Philosopher's Stone. So again, we have the Philosopher's Stone at this point. It's just unstable. So what does that really mean? And it says, the embryo of the Tao. According to the law, but without exertion, one must diligently fill oneself with light. Forgetting appearance, look within and help the true spiritual power. 10 months the embryo is under fire. After a year, the washing and bathings become warm. This picture will be found in the original edition of the Ling Chang. But the ignorant monks who did not recognize the hidden meaning and knew nothing about the embryo of the Tao have for this reason made the mistake of leaving this picture out. Only found out through the explanations of adepts that the Julsi, a true mortal, knows real work on the embryo of the Tao. This embryo is nothing corporeal visible which might be completed by other beings, but is in reality the spiritual breath energy of the ego. So what he's saying there is that the embryo, what really basically forms the child, is the ego. So the ego is transformed in the yellow phase into the child, into the Philosopher's Stone. First, the spirit must penetrate the breath energy, the soul. Then the breath energy envelops the spirit. When spirit and breath energy are firmly united and the thoughts quiet and immobile, this is described as the embryo. The breath energy must crystallize. Only then will the spirit become effective. Therefore, it is said in the Ling Yan Qing, take maternal care of the awakening and the answering. The two energies nourish and strengthen one another. Therefore, it is said, daily growth takes place. When the energy is strong enough and the embryo is round and complete, it comes out of the top of the head. This is what is called the completed appearance, which comes forth as embryo and begets itself as the son of the Buddha. So that's a really good description of the Philosopher's Stone. So it's saying it's coming out of the head, but it's pretty much a state of consciousness. The birth of the fruit. Outside the body there is a body called the Buddha image. The thought, which is powerful, the absence of thoughts, is Bodhi. The 1,000-petaled lotus flower opens, transformed through breath energy. Because of the crystallization of the spirit, 100-fold splendor shines forth. Now the 1,000-petaled lotus flower is typically the crown chakra. So it's saying that your crown chakra is open and you're connected to spirit. So this is the process, the spiritization process, the spiritualization process connects you to spirit, connects you to all that is. And that's why I say that it brings with it unity consciousness. And that's one of the things that I think is one of the signifiers of reaching the state of the yellow stage, is that, and the Philosopher's Stone is unity consciousness. Now, feeling that connection with all that is, feeling connected with everything, is a state of being that I have and I've had for a long time, as far as I can tell, forever. I was aware of it as a child. It was something that took me a while to learn that other people weren't connected like that. But I think unity consciousness for most people is a state of mind that you have to reach through practices such as meditation and alchemy. And alchemy is meditation. It's placing your mind upon something. For the alchemists, they would place their mind upon the substance that they were working with, the experiments that they were working with. And so they would have, in their alchemy lab, they would actually have a space where they were working on the substance, and then they would have a dark curtained area where they would go in and meditate on the substance. And nobody else was to know about it. Nobody else was supposed to work with the substance. It was just them. So it was them working on their consciousness on one level, and on the other level, placing their mind upon the substance they were working with and the experiments that they were doing. So it does take, I think Paul Foster Case says, unless you can meditate, you can't do alchemy. But the truth is that we all meditate all the time, because meditation is simply placing your mind upon a subject and focusing on it and dismissing all thoughts. And so at this level, according to Secret of the Golden Flower, you also find yourself without thoughts. You have this state of mind where those racing thoughts don't exist, where you're equal. And instead, when you reach that point, and I reached that point a while ago with mindfulness meditation. You kind of summon thoughts up into your mind instead of being controlled by them. People have been brainwashed to think they are separated from everything and to believe that they are only made of salt. Yeah, Val, a lot of people think that they are just connected to their physical body, that they're only their physical body. That is the main perception of most people, even if they're spiritual, even if they are religious. Most people think they're only their body and that they're going to resurrect in their body, which I personally find very interesting. Once I kind of examined that belief when I was doing my own personal subconscious shadow work, I realized that first off, that we're more than our body, but it's kind of silly to expect the body to resurrect, especially if we have incarnation, because which incarnation is going to resurrect? But you're right, most people, I don't think it's necessarily that they've been brainwashed, that people are like victims. I think most people don't think beyond their bodies. They don't think beyond this life. It's a lot to think of multiple lives, to think of yourself as multidimensional. Now, that's something that does happen on the path of the seeker, as far as I'm concerned, because I've reached that point where I just accept that I've had multiple lives. I did do past life regression. But once you accept that you're multidimensional, especially when you meet your higher self, as I have, which I covered in a video, but when you meet your higher self, you realize you're a multidimensional being, having simultaneous experiences over multiple lives. And it's hard to unview that, to not believe that anymore. So it's kind of hard for me to go back to the point where I thought I was only my body. Although there was definitely a point there where I did. Although I came into spirituality and the idea of reincarnation very young. Reincarnation was just something that my entire family believed in, which is very odd for the fact that they were more Baptist Christians, but we didn't really go to church that much. So I didn't really have that experience of going to church and having that whole thing, kind of that brainwashing, as you called it, Val, go through. But as I was saying, pardon me, acute bronchitis. I'm going to take a sip of coffee. But in this phase, I had a long conversation with my dad about being a starseed. I don't know if it's the same thing, but I can shake the feeling that my soul wasn't created on Earth. Yeah, Meg, I think a lot of souls aren't created on Earth, to be honest. I think a lot of souls, especially now, right now, are starseeds that come from other planets. I resonate with Sirius, the star Sirius. It has come up multiple times through synchronicity in my experiences. But because of my past life recall and different things, especially meeting my higher self, I think I came from here. So it's pretty cool that you're starseed, because starseeds are pretty special. That'd be fun to remember your past life as a starseed on another planet. You should probably check that out. I think you'd really love that. So at this point, in the yellow phase of alchemy, is where we have the first lesser stone. And this is in fermentation. And this is a good time to cover the sun card. The sun card, basically in esoteric tradition, represents vitality. The sun brings a life force to our planet. It is the life breath, the life force of the planet. And you can see here that there's sunflowers. And the sunflowers turn towards the sun during the day, tracking it across the sky. And so that's the importance of the sunflowers, is that they actually follow the sun. And a lot of people say, and I think D.W. Huck actually recommends, to greet the sun, to wake up in the morning and greet the sun, to wake up when it's dawn. And I do that anyway because I have small children, so I don't really have much of a choice but to wake up at dawn. And it's interesting that children's energy is focused. Their circadian rhythm is already focused on rising with the sun. And when you rise with the sun and you take in the energy of the sun, you partake of that vitality, that energy. And so it's perfect that the child, the Philosopher's Stone, would be depicted by the sun card, because it's that vitality. And they say the Philosopher's Stone brings with it good health, which tells you that I haven't obtained it yet, right? And and vitality. It brings with it a youthfulness. It brings basically a more younger energy into your life. You're connected to that vitality, to that life force, and you're able to control it. And I think in here, it actually covers that a little bit in the Secret of the Golden Flower. Again, I'm reading from Edgar Cayce's and the Secret of the Golden Flower. Now, I like this book because I studied Edgar Cayce a lot, and I have several of his books. And they explain in the book of Revelation the spiritualization process. But when asked about the process of spiritualization, Edgar Cayce actually sent people to the Secret of the Golden Flower and said that was the book to read because it covers everything. All right. So we were reading about the birth of the fruit. If a man does not receive the teaching about inner essence and animated life, but merely repeats meditation formulas stolidly and in solitude, how could there develop out of his own body the Gelei, a true immortal, who sits and shines forth the lotus flower and appears in his own spirit body? Many say that the light spirit is a minor teaching, but how can that which a man receives from the ruler of the world be a minor teaching? Herewith I have betrayed the deepest secret of the Ling Yin Ching in order to teach disciples. He who receives this way rises at once to the dark secret, and no longer becomes submerged in the dust of everyday life. So it is supposed to also grant immortality. So the self is transformed at this point, is what the Secret of the Golden Flower says, is your self is transformed. Your inner self is transformed at the yellow phase. So once you reach this unstable philosopher's stone, this white lesser stone, it's a transformation. And that transformation continues into the next phase, which is distillation. And you can see here, this is the symbol for distillation that D.W. Huck gives. And this is associated with the Judgment card. So in alchemy, there is in the alchemical wedding, which the Rosicrucians have, which I can't remember the name of the author. I read it in the Rosicrucians Digest. So if you want to read the alchemical wedding yourself, I recommend going to Amazon and looking up the Rosicrucian Digest on alchemy, and it's in there. And in it, the king and the queen are killed, and the alchemical child dies. And that's in the distillation phase, which is interesting. So you have fermentation where things grow, things are spiritualized, right? And that's the lesser stone. In distillation, the child and the conscious and the subconscious, so the new superconscious and the subconscious and the conscious they die, and then they're resurrected. And this shows their resurrection. Helps if I use the right card. This shows their resurrection with the angel. So this is the point where the three states of mind, the subconscious, the consciousness, and the superconscious, are all reborn. And I wanted to read from the Alchemy book, workbook, Exercise in Transformation, by D.W. Huck, what he has to say about distillation. Chemical distillation is the boiling and condensation of a solution to increase the concentration and purity. The alchemists believe that distillation releases the essence or spirit of a substance. For instance, the spirit wine is produced by distilling a solution of fermented grapes. The alchemical symbol for distillation is the alembic, which is a hood that fits over the boiling fluid, condensing the rising vapors and directing the purified condensate via a funnel or tube to a collecting vessel. Repeated distillation produces an extremely concentrated solution the alchemists called the mother of the stone. So we had the lesser stone, which was the white stone in fermentation. In distillation, we have the mother of the stone. Now the phrase is, it rises from the earth to heaven and descends to earth again. So here we don't have two substances. We just have one. We just have rises from the earth and to heaven and descends to earth again, which is the perfect phrase to go with a resurrection, right? I love this card because it's so holographic. Now you get to see some of my tarot cards, Meg. If you guys haven't checked out Meg's channel, she does tarot readings and she's awesome. So on the Azov picture, which I printed out actually, on the Azov picture, this is the phase where the unicorn is seen with the flowers. And the flowers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that usually represents the 5 senses. So this is the phase with the unicorn. And let's look at what Dennis William Huck has to say about that. The Azov 6 ray points to the feather, symbol of air, and the process of spiritualization. This ray is associated with the color indigo or lapis blue with gold specks in it. It is marked with a symbol for the metal and planet Mercury, as well as an identical smaller symbol indicating the heavenly element of Mercury. A mercurial temperament means a flighty person, whose moods and behavior do not seem tied to any earthly explanation. Relationships with people from Mercury are always changing. Mercurians can be totally attentive and sensitive one minute and totally self-involved the next. They need distillation to fix their aspirations and gain perspective over their lives. The 6th circle shows a unicorn lying on the ground in front of a rose bush. According to legend, the unicorn runs tirelessly from pursuers, but lies meekly on the ground when approached by a virgin. In this case, the virgin is the purified alchemist, who has returned to a state of innocence to the release and purification of thoughts and emotions. Above the circle is written occultum, meaning secret or hidden. This circle represents the distillation operation in which the purified soul will behold its object and peer into the eye of God. To do so demands the utmost purification, which repeated distillation symbolizes. For the modern adept, distillation consists of introspective techniques that attempt to raise the content of the psyche to the highest level possible, free from all sentimentality and personal attachments. Distillation takes us into the rarefied realm of the one mind, where base emotions cannot follow. It is the purification of the unborn self, all that we truly are and can be spiritually. So the unborn self obviously is the soul. So, as you can tell, it's at this stage that you're raised to a different level. You're raised to a more pure state of mind. Now this involves the third eye chakra. It is Binah, which is understanding, and Hokmah, wisdom on the Kabbalah tree of life. This is Virgo and Libra, which might surprise some people. And it's associated with the moon. So it's associated with the subconscious. The moon always represents the subconscious. Same with water. And the moon and water obviously are very connected. The moon controls the tides, controls the water on our planet. So the emotions are involved as well. Well, I can really hear kids playing in the background. I don't know if you guys can hear that or not. But there are some kids up and playing really hard outside. Now for Paul Foster Case, distillation also comes at near the end. Let's see. Give me one moment to find it. I just covered this. And for Paul Foster Case, multiplication is the final stage in his. And I'll be covering that final 12 system in my next video. Can't believe we've gone through all 12 signs of the zodiac and the 12 steps of the alchemy. It's pretty amazing to have gotten to that point. Give me one moment to find it here. Sorry, distillation's at the beginning with Paul Foster Case. So here he does explain the Philosopher's Stones. It's the most precious object they have called the Philosopher's Stone, and the most ancient, secret, natural, incomprehensible, heavenly, blessed, beautified, and triune universal stone of the sages. The reason for naming it a stone or likening it to a stone was this. First, because its original matter is really a kind of stone, which being hard and solid like a stone may be pounded, reduced to powder, and resolved into its three elements, which nature herself has joined together. And we know the three elements are the three basics. It's the mercury, salt, and sulfur. So those are the three elements that it's pounded down to. And then maybe recombined into a solid stone of the fusibility of wax by the skilled hand of the artist adjusting the law of nature. Now, it's Ripley who says that it's wax-like. So that's another thing about the Philosopher's Stone, is it's wax-like in nature. So it melts. It's not really completely solid. It's kind of like mercury. So it has adaptability. I think that's very important to remember. When we think of the Philosopher's Stone, we think of something solid. But if it's like wax and it melts when necessary, then that means that it adapts to situations. It changes as it needs to change to basically adjust to different situations and things that happen. So I think that wax-like nature is very important. I'm still looking for distillation in here. Let's see if it's actually in the beginning here. No, it doesn't go through the different chapters. Old books don't have chapters. Wow, they're really having fun out there. Alright. I'm surprised I removed the marks I had in here. It's definitely, I missed it. But yeah, I think a lot of people are starseeds at the moment. I think we are living in a very important time, and I think that alchemy is a big part of that. And I think that's why alchemy is so popular now. So I think it gives people a different way to approach things, a more scientific way, which I think is kind of more healthy than just blindly following anything. Alright, so we have calcination, congealation, which he has really early, which we'll cover when we cover coagulation and the red phase. And surprisingly, there are two phases in the final video that I'll be covering, which is coagulation and the secret step of alchemy, which is the return to Saturn. So we go through all these crazy different layers of consciousness, of self-awareness, and then we come back to the body. We come back to corpus. Because we always have to return to the body. We have to return to where we've been. Alright, and this associates distillation with Virgo, which is not surprising. Because it's cleanliness, because it's purity, right? Alright, the sixth stage of the work is distillation according to Paul Foster Case. It corresponds to the sign Virgo, and thus to the letter Yod, which has three attributes: the intelligence of will, the sense of touch, the function of cohesion, and the direction north below. Tarot Key 9, the Hermit. So in this, it's according to the astrology instead of to the 7 cards of the Seeker, which is what we're actually following, which gave us, if I can find it, gave us the Judgment card. So we're following the 7 stages. But again, this is where, let's see, explains about Virgo. Alright, the child itself is relatively gross. The essences extracted from it are volatile, moving rapidly from one part of the body to another part. The most important of these subtle essences have not yet been identified by physical science, but they have known for centuries by yogis in the Orient and alchemists in the Occident. The alchemists call one of these subtle essences aurum potable, that is, gold which may be drunk, or liquid gold. So again, this connects with this yellow phase, this liquid gold. And it's referred to in the East as the golden pill. And there is a reference to the golden pill in The Secret of the Golden Flower, but for some reason when I was looking for different references, I couldn't find it. So this is called the golden pill, this phase. And what they mean by this is precisely what the yogis mean by the solar current of prana. The subtle essence is released from the child by the process of assimilation in the small intestine. In ordinary human beings, only a portion of the fluid gold is taken into the circulation. Yet all of us have some of it. If we did not, we should not be alive. For this reason, all the alchemical sages agree with Ripley, who writes, "Fowls and fishes bring it to us. Every single man has it. It is everywhere, in you, in me, in every time and space." But the alchemical adept, by distillation, charges his bloodstream and his nervous system with a superabundance of this fluid gold. He is enabled to do this because of the fact veiled by the astrological dictum that Virgo is ruled by Mercury, which planet is also exalted in this sign. The practical meaning is that the process of assimilation is under the rulership of the conscious mind. Primarily, this rule is exerted in the selection of what we eat and drink, and in breath control. For mark this well, it is the breath which makes assimilation complete. Thus Ripley says, "Be moderate in eating and drinking. Do not soften your belly by drinking immoderately, lest you quench your natural heat too soon." This is something for the bellows blowers to ponder. For if alchemy were performed in an external laboratory, what difference would the physical condition of the alchemist make in the outcome of the work? Eat moderately, eat what you like and what agrees with you. Find this out by experiment and by reading sound scientific explanations of the various food values, which is so confusing this day and age. I've read so many conflicting things when it comes to food. It is so confusing. So personally, I believe that you should eat what agrees with you and gives you energy. So, but I think it's important to watch what you eat, and what you eat does affect your mind. Definitely does. For the alchemical work, eat foods rich in vitamins, especially those in vitamin D. Do not be a faddist. The mental state of a diet crank forbids his ever succeeding in the great work. But when you eat, remember that you are selecting the raw materials for transmutation into the philosopher's stone. As a general rule, so far as quantity of food goes, the old yogi rule, eat half what can be conveniently eaten, holds good. No general rule, however, applies to all persons. And then it goes on to say, if you are sick, do not attempt yoga practice or alchemy. Study the theory all you like, but attend to your health first. For the alchemical work demands strength of body and normal function at its beginning. Remember, the alchemical state of consciousness is supernormal, and you cannot expect to enjoy supernormal states if you haven't normal ones to begin with. So that's always interesting. So he does associate food with distillation and knowing what types of food to eat, because it is going to change the physical body. Which I said, I can tell you that I haven't reached that state because I have acute bronchitis. But it changes his physical body, and it's supposed to bring you vitality and great health. And I think a golden consciousness is what it really brings, and that's what the yellow phase is about. So I've been going for quite a while here. I'm going to finish by reading the Emerald Tablet one more time. And remember, the two phrases associated with this were separate the earth from the fire, the subtle from the gross. That was fermentation. And for distillation, it is rises from the earth to heaven and descends to earth again. The Emerald Tablet. In truth, without deceit, certain and most veritable, that which is below corresponds to that which is above, and that which is above corresponds to that which is below. To accomplish the miracles of the one thing, and just as all things have come from this one thing, through the meditation of one mind, so do all created things originate from this one thing, through transformation. Its father is the sun, its mother the moon. The wind carries it in its belly. Its nurse is the earth. It is the origin of all, the consecration of the universe. Its inherent strength is perfected, if it is turned into earth. And here we have, separate the earth from fire, the subtle from the gross. Gently and with great ingenuity, it rises from the earth to heaven and descends again to earth, thereby combining with itself the powers of the above and below. And so even in the Emerald Tablet, we have that combination of the higher and the lower self, or the subconscious, the conscious self, and the superconscious, this newly formed superconscious. And that's one thing that's really interesting about alchemy, is the suggestion that the superconscious does not actually exist until you start to work with it, until you actually start to create it. So the philosopher's child is really the superconscious. And it doesn't exist. This new body, this new consciousness, new awareness doesn't actually exist from separate the wound from the love. Hang on a second, guys. Someone's trying to call me. So this higher self doesn't actually, hello CC99. So this higher self doesn't actually exist until you actually work on yourself. So that's something that's kind of different from what psychology believes. Psychology believes that higher self, that superconscious, exists before. But in alchemy, you actually create it through the process of alchemy. You're creating it through working with these principles. And basically, you're creating that higher self, that super consciousness. Prior to that creation, it doesn't exist. So you're literally creating a new state of being that becomes your permanent state of being in the red phase. So separate the earth from the fire, the subtle from the gross, gently and with great ingenuity. It rises from earth to heaven and descends again to earth, thereby combining within itself the powers of the above and the below. Thus will you obtain the glory of the whole universe. All obscurity will be clear to you. This is the greatest force of all powers, because it overcomes every subtle thing and penetrates every solid thing. In this way was the universe created. From this comes many wondrous applications, because this is the pattern. Therefore I am called the thrice greatest Hermes, having all three parts of the wisdom of the whole universe. Herein have I completely explained the operation of the sun. And one of the interesting things, if you think of the three essentials, is the thrice greatest Hermes, or the three parts of the wisdom of the whole universe, could be the three essentials. It could be salt, sulfur, and mercury. And again, salt is the body, sulfur is the soul, and mercury is spirit. And so those are the three elements of us. Thank you for whoever is giving me the hearts. I appreciate that. So those three elements of us are what we're working here with. But with the creation of that super consciousness, that philosopher's stone that was created during fermentation, we are, pardon me, we're creating a new consciousness, a new awareness, which is what makes it the fifth element. The philosopher's stone, one of the things that it's referred to is the fifth element. And so super consciousness would be the fifth element, this new state of mind, this new state of being, which is golden in nature and ties to this yellow phase of alchemy. So I think that I'm going to leave it there. I hope that all of you that watched had some fun with this. Is there any questions about what we went over or anything else? I'll give it a few moments to go through, because I know that it takes a little bit for everyone to get caught up and for the messages to actually pop up. So I'll give it a little bit of time. This is a fun phase, because the yellow phase is one that I don't think many of us have achieved. I might have achieved unity consciousness, but I don't think that I've reached the distillation phase but at the same time, when you're placing your mind upon these things, you can kind of think of it as something that you've accomplished, something that you've done. Just like in the 12 steps of alchemy, just by reaching the 11th stage, we reached a point of realization that we wouldn't have reached without all 11 videos. Thank you, Meg. I appreciate that. So I think with that, I'm going to head out. Thank you all for joining me. I really appreciate it. And you guys have a wonderful rest of your night. Bye. Once I turn this off.